bit about that. But actually, I'm afraid I've been a bit self-indulgent in that while I was thinking about this talk. Looking back over the stuff I've been involved in over the years, too many stories I'm now free to talk about because I'm not working in the public sector. I just wanted to share them with an audience that would hopefully appreciate them. So I've got 10 lessons from 20 years of doing open data stuff. I've been doing open data stuff, trying to wrangle open data out of public institutions for a long time. So I've got some stories. In that, hopefully you'll get a sense of what it takes for an organisation to shift from being closed to being open in all its myriad forms. So, it's nice. Why is it nice? It's nice because I can show a room like this tonight, something like the government digital service design principles, and not have to explain why they're the right way of working and way of thinking. I can just assume that you're going to know that you start with a few users, not your organisation. Design with data, you iterate again. And crucially, the last one, making things open just makes things better. I don't need to explain to you why that is the last and ergo the most important of these. Whenever I've never ever before not had to explain that to an audience. By open, what do I mean? Of course I mean open data. You're a public institution and many private institutions, I think you should default to having your data as infrastructure, open as infrastructure. But it means having an open culture. Open source, contributing, using, open communications, an open culture to a diversity of people in your teams, and an open culture within your organisation to speak truth and to power, and to not follow the HIPAA principle of making decisions based on the highest paid person. That's what I mean by open. That's what being open makes things better. It's also nice because I can tell you this story without worrying about Michael Gove. GitHub, this is the merge that launched Gov.uk, so the beta of Gov.uk. Here's the comment. Dafeth, actually flip the switch, as it were, and you know, brilliant. It's GitHub, lots of cheering. Yeah, cheering, gives, yeah, more cheering, yeah, cheering, yeah, cheering. So, you know, fun. Fast forward a bit. Wonderful thing about GitHub and the fact that the government is now open source online, gov.uk or GitHub, was that I got a pull request. Actually, it was a couple of years after we launched, to be fair, but we launched a new feature, a new benefit calculator. Again, all in GitHub. And about 2 days after it launched, we got that pull request from a member of the public, a gentleman called Matthew Somerville, Dracos. And he said this, I'll let you read that. In short, your calculator's wrong. Kind of pretty badly wrong, actually, and here's the evidence as to why it's wrong. It's a child benefit calculator. For many people like us, that's not a problem to get that calculator wrong. If you're on a bread line, that's a problem. Okay. So, member of staff at GDS says, ooh, okay, thanks, Rickles. I'm just going to check, basically with HMRC, because the issue was around pensions, which is an HMRC domain in this case. 2 days later, it came back, fixed it, accepted your pull request. Your code is now live on gov.uk, you fixed the program on gov.uk. Brilliant, benefits calculator is fixed, 2 days. It's actually 4 days in total where it was wrong. Which is bad, but it's better than this. Okay? Which is on Michael Gove's bit of a watch where they had decided to implement Adobe eForms. Anyone's worked iForms, I think they're called. Anyone ever used Adobe iForms? Basically a PDF with business logic embedded within it. Proprietary, closed, you can't see how the logic works. They had a form on there for 20 months that was really badly wrong about calculating the money split in a divorce. Thousands of couples had used the form and split their money up wrong. And the guy that spotted this was a divorce lawyer, and he'd been nagging away at Ministry of Justice for 4 months until the Daily Mail noticed. At which point, Michael goes on the front page of BBC News, go and solve it. Difference? Well, 4 days versus 20 months. countless thousands of people with a mistake that impacted their real life. There were 39 people who used the calculator wrongly. There was only a marginal issue, pension tax. The Difference Corporation. Okay. It's a government website. We all own the government. The fact that we put it on GitHub and people were free to contribute, read the source, spot the right in the source, submit pull requests and us to merge it like that is, I think, the future of government in a digital era. That kind of mindset, that kind of way of thinking, that openness, that porousness, that ability to accept changes from the public. Check them. Which brings us on to the co-op and why I'm here. Went from GDS to co-op. Had a fantastic time at GDS, 5 years, amazing, really proud of what we achieved. Made a bunch of mistakes. But there was only one place I wanted to go, and that was here. And there's a reason for that, which is encapsulated by John Post. John Post was the man who kind of ran the internet about 20 years. Ran DNS by himself. So it got taken over by, he died, it got taken over by ICANN. And he said this: the internet works because lots of people cooperate to do things together. That happens to be true. And that is why the internet worked, and lots of proprietary networks didn't. That's us. That's us, right? And it's our job, Coop Digital, a new bit of co-op, to convert that into successful businesses. One thing to not forget about cooperative is fundamentally we're a business. We're a business that's owned by our members, but we're a business. And we're at the early stages of that journey to working out that potential for how a cooperative could operate in an internet era is unbelievably exciting to me. The alignment between the values of the internet, the way the internet works, and the co-op are just brilliantly close. And we're asking ourselves this kind of question: what happens if you have membership, cooperation, and the internet together? What could you do? Where could an organisation that's owned by its users gain competitive advantage? No shareholder extracting value in that mix. We've only just started. But the way we're working should be no surprise to anyone who's kept an eye on GDS over the years. We've got stickers. That's no surprise. The lap max. We haven't hacked our working environment so it works for the team. The team doesn't fix the working environment. The working environment fits to the team. That's critical. The unit of delivery is the team. The team is empowered to do what's needed. Rough consensus running code. You know, we've got tons of code already. We're going to throw it all away because it's all wrong. But we'll try something quickly and we're testing it. So we're working in a way that if anyone's looked at us, you'll know we work this way. We work in the open. We're doing show and tells all the time. You come up to our space. We're blogging. We're agile with a little a. We're not dogmatic about any particular methodology. The team owns the process. The process doesn't own the team. We are religiously multidisciplinary in my teams. We have people who understand user research. We have people who are product managers, delivery managers, developers, designers, content designers. It's the mix of people bringing different perspectives together, diversity of people from different backgrounds that is the magic. And we start with needs. We don't start with the needs of the co-op, we start with the needs of our users. And the wonderful thing about the co-op is our users are our own. That's why the opportunities are exciting, because our users are our owners. That means we can think longer term. That means we can make sure the alignment around how do we look after your personal data. I do not have to worry about whether co-op should sell or market the personal data of our members. It's theirs, and they own us. Much harder if you're in a VC-funded organisation or a commercially funded organisation. So, enough co-op. Happy to answer questions at the end. We're really quite early. It's exciting. Actually, our focus is a lot on helping existing co-op businesses take the step change into a digital world, work in this different way. But we have got half an eye on some of the opportunities that are emerging that are new, where a co-op could get competitive advantage and do interesting stuff. Right. My indulgence. So the first lesson. I did a bunch of things early in my career. I helped launch BBC News Online in 1997. I was a journalist for a bit, and I did a startup in 1998 called Up My Street, which the only screen grab I've got comes from the Internet Archive, which is mangled like this. Up My Street was a local information website, and I did it with a friend of mine called Steph, and we scraped all the data, mostly from government websites. We got the path off the Royal Mail website in the days before rate limiting. We reverse engineered a Windows 3 help file to get the school performance data from the Department of Education because they wouldn't treat us as journalists and give us the raw data. We scraped everything we could from everywhere, wrapped it around your postcode, told you everything about the civic information about where you lived. We launched at the end of August 1998. 2 weeks later, 2 things have happened. Okay? First thing that happened was we had our first parody. Okay? Which I have got a screenshot of on my hard disk. Even though I haven't got the actual site, I've got a parody, which is lovely, not much changes on the internet. Don't read that too much. The man who did that now works for Google in a very senior capacity. And I will blackmail him with that if he ever causes me any trouble. More seriously, 2 weeks later I got a phone call. And I got a phone call from a lawyer who works for the Emergency Stationery Office. And I knew this phone call was coming. We'd scraped all the data. It was Crown copyright. The days before the concept of open data really landed, shall we say, in the government, notwithstanding lots of people were working in the area. And we had our whole PR and comms strategy lined up. And we thought this lawyer's going to try and shut us down because all the stuff's Crown copyright. There's no click-use license. We've got no permission. Which is the best PR story in the world for a website that's consumer-friendly and lovely and nice on my street. So I literally had the emails pre-written to the journalists going, the government's trying to shut us down! You know, instantly. She really irritated me because she didn't say that. She didn't say that. She said, we're not going to take it to court, sorry, because you're going to win in the court of public opinion. Because you made a thing that there's no way we can shut you down. It's not costing us anything. It's nice, I like it, my boss likes it, my boss's boss likes it, the minister's going to like it, the journalists are going to like it. So no, I am not shutting you down. She could not have been crisper and clearer about the fact that despite that, you're infringing, but I'm not shutting you down. And she was wonderful, to give her credit, because she said, by the way, can we go offline? Can we go off the record? So she basically said, see no evil, I'm not going to shut you down, but you are infringing. And then she flipped me over. She said, do you mind talking off the record? So I said, okay, grumpily. And we had a fantastic conversation about what it would take for her to get HMSO in a position whereby Crown copyright could be as easy for me as a 25-year-old in a bit of dodgy office in London to use as it should be. So we talked about attribution, we talked about accuracy, we talked about data formats to a lawyer in 1998. She said to me, this will take 5 years to come, but I can't see that it's not going to come. So be patient. Don't make me look stupid and report this conversation until 2016, which I'm now doing. But it will come. And she was right. 3 years later, to her credit, you got a click-use license for government Crown copyright information, which is use it, which is now morphed into the Open Government license, which I think is not a bad exemplar of a genuinely open license. And that's now the norm for large, if not most parts of government, trading funds apart. Why did that work? We showed a thing. Didn't go and ask permission. Didn't go and engage in a theoretical conversation with the lawyer. Just made a thing that was so nice everybody wanted it. I want one of those. Let's make it so that the conditions are created to do it. Did the same with gov.uk, by the way. Didn't say we need a new website, built an alpha in 12 weeks with 12 people, where ministers just went, oh, one of those, that looks lovely. Can we have that, please? And then everything follows. So show the future and then deal with the consequences. Second thing I've learned, this goes back to the first one, institutions are made of people. You often hear people go, oh, the government this, and Department of X that, and Royal Mail that, as if they're a thing. They've just got people in them. And there's no point ranting about institutions, really. talk about the people in them. And there will be people inside those institutions who understand what you're trying to do and will help you. And you can help them critically. And align yourself, find those people, work out how you can help them liberate the data. Best example I've got is this. I did a site in my spare time called They Work For You in 2003-04, scraping Hansard, essentially, creating voting records for your MP, again, all sorts of copyright issues and issues of licensing that I'll come to a little bit later, actually, another lesson. Parliament, you can imagine, click use Parliament. These people deal in iterations of 100 years, I think it's quick. I found this man. Do you know who this is? John Sheridan, my hero, absolute hero of mine. He's the man behind legislation.gov.uk. He's pretty much a career civil servant. You meet him, he's very urbane, he likes classical music, he's very polite, mannered, sharp as a knife. Any sort of senior civil servant will think, oh, he's one of us. Okay, he's not one of them. He's a trained open data killer, and they never see him coming. Okay, they never see him coming. And he was able to point me, very politely, to the right people in Parliament to let me get a licence for They Work For You. And those people are still there. I'm not going to name them because they didn't seek permission themselves. They just gave me a licence. There's a lesson there. Find the people inside the organisations, the public institutions, or private ones that want to work this way and work out how you can help them win the arguments internally. There's a corollary which is critical. There's no point ranting. There's no point going, because the civil service in particular is really good at ignoring ranting. It makes it easy, really easy for those who want to ignore your message to ignore you. Really, really easy. You're lost if you've ranted. Even though it's really tempting. Well, no geeking, you know. Some of us speak fluent geek. They don't know what an API is, most of them. Don't talk about APIs to people who are never going to understand what an API is, even if they should. Probably not going to. And no long policy papers explaining how the world should be. From this user group or that open data user group that no one in government is ever going to go, thank you very much, very interested in your paper, in the bottom drawer. Okay. Long papers, no point at all. I've written a few myself, by the way, when I was on the outside of government. They never get read. You get the whole civil service stick about, thank you very much, go in the bottom drawer, pointless. So don't do those three things. Find your friends inside, ask them how you can help, and you will be able to help. Change might take 30 years. It might, because we're dealing with some seismic changes in the nature and institutional shape of governments and public institutions. That ain't going to happen quickly in every case. So in 2008, I got fed up with working at Ofcom, and I went on secondment to work for Tom Watson at the Cabinet Office. Tom Watson at the time was a junior Cabinet Minister who'd shown a lot of interest in this kind of agenda. He still does, actually, as Deputy Leader of the Labour Party. And I'd worked with him to do a thing called Show Us a Better Way, which is a website run by the government to say, show us what you would make if we release this data. Now, Tom was a genius, explicitly, because he'd realised that if he had a competition running that relied on open data, that had a prize next to it, that was in the press, and he did some good press, he'd be able to go around to the bits of government and go, release this data, just for the competition, release this data. So we got the postcode address file out as open data, once and once only, for this competition. Afterwards, I will tell you how Tom got the Chief Executive of the Post Office to release the of the World Map to release the postcode address file. Not pretty, but he did it. One time and one time only. I thought we were winning. Okay, we are winning a bunch of other data out. We are winning. The gentleman in that photo who's looking with glasses is Lord Allen, Richard Allen, the Lib Dem peer. He bet me on that podium, that's an Open Tech conference, 2008, that the postcode address file would not be released as open data in my lifetime. Okay, and he's winning the bet as we stand, because it's still not. In fact, it's been privatised as part of all of that privatisation. Sometimes it takes a long time. More on that later. Oh yeah, bloody Americans are going to do it before we do. Which is really, really upsetting. Really, Americans. Oh. change can take 30 seconds. And you never know when the dam will break. You never know. Keep pushing. Let me give you the example. Back to They Work For You. They Work For You scraped Hansard, republished it, wrapped stuff around an MP so you can see how your MP, what they were saying and how they were voting. Lots of MPs really hated it. They hated sunlight, transparency. They grew to understand it a bit more. But one of the things about Hansard is you've got parliamentary privilege at work. You cannot sue someone for libel for what's been written in Hansard, which is why you get people standing up in Parliament saying that person's a crook. You can't be sued. They're literally, as a crook, it's one of the only places in the UK where you're unsuable. We were republishing. We had a license, but our license did not include that ability to say we're no longer liable. So there were people, actually crooks, if I'm honest, who'd been outed as crooks by MPs in Parliament. This person's a crook, here's why, just to out them. Who were writing me nasty letters saying, I'm going to take you to court, you libelled me, you've got no protection from defamation because you're republished. I'm like, oh shit, I might have to take this down. This is before we handed it over to my society to and I moaned at someone in a pub who I didn't even really know who they were, just a random person I met who seemed interested. And literally a week later this happened. So this is on the floor of the House of Commons. This is the shadow leader of the House, Theresa May at the time, and Jack Straw, who's the leader of the House. They are having a conversation about the fact that we're being sued for libel and wondering whether a republished version of Hansard would also be protected from defamation. And the crucial line is this one. It's Jack Straw. Remember, House of Parliament is a court. It's the highest court in the land, arguably. This matter is privileged. He just changed the law. They didn't, that was all scripted beforehand. Right. Jack Straw just clarified the law to say we were covered, like that. I'd love to write a letter back to this guy's lawyers. You might want to have a look in Hansard to see where the law stands on this matter now. Literally, it took 30 seconds on the law. Nothing changed. So sometimes you push, and things change really quickly, so keep pushing. Learn to speak politician and learn to interpret Mandarin. I'm not going to recommend you learn to speak Mandarin. It's not a skill that is valuable. But you need to interpret when a Mandarin is fobbing you off, because they'll say so ever so politely, make you think they're on your side. Likewise, politician. For my lesson, and it's been a bit of a journey for me, the kind of messages we're giving around open data, politicians absolutely love. Once we've worked out how to speak to them, speak in English, speak human, not talk about APIs, talk about transparency, sunlight is a great disinfectant, ability to start new businesses that otherwise wouldn't be able to be formed, civic infrastructure, data as infrastructure, that kind of language, politicians are like, okay, I'm interested in this. But I also learned a lesson which is politicians aren't actually that powerful. It's the civil service that runs Britain. That's not necessarily a good thing, but that's the truth. So the real argument is with the Mandarins. And the Mandarin's job is to make sure there's no change. So you've got a job interpreting what they're saying to make sure they do change. Here's an example from 98, which is a conversation that does continue. I used to learn this lesson. In 1998, they were trying to introduce a law around encryption. Trying to essentially make sure we gave BT a copy of all our encryption keys, because they couldn't be dealing with the fact that encryption had been invented and that maths was going to change the world. And I was sat next to a former civil servant at the time. It was actually up my street at the time. And he said, you've got to work on the MPs, you've got to talk to MPs, you've got to educate MPs, you've got to help them understand why this is important. And it was in that place we ran a little campaign called Adopt an MP. We went round and we helped people find their MPs and educate them about this. And I realised then politicians were going to get this quickly as long as we spoke their language. Again, the real issue of Mandarins in the Home Office, I'm afraid, and that debate does continue to this day. Can't be too paranoid about personal data. This is really embarrassing as well. I'm genuinely ashamed about what I'm about to tell you, because it was bad. But it's, I think, pertinent. This is not funny, this actually. There's no funniness in this. I worked in the BBC for 6 or 7 years. Did a bunch of things, backstage.bbc.co.uk, did some strategy work, put some platforms in. And one of the things I did was spot the fact that they had in their archive department a complete database of every BBC programme ever, and who'd been in it, what time it was broadcast. It was a librarian's dream. It was a horrible green screen database, but the data was clean, and the librarians had kind of been quite disciplined. I was thinking, brilliant, that's amazing open data. Okay. I've been in the BBC long enough to know that they wouldn't fire me, whatever I did, because the BBC never fires anybody. So I just did it. I literally just made friends with the archivists, librarians, got some people to turn it all into RDF, stuck it up online, put a big experimental post up at the top. Thought I was a hero. Yeah, open data, yeah. About 6 months later, I got a phone call on holiday from a lawyer at the BBC saying, we've had an email from South Africa from a lady who had appeared in a broadcast in 1986 on Radio 4 about domestic violence in South Africa. She had been guaranteed, she'd searched her name on Google and this had come up. She had been guaranteed anonymity in the course of making that programme. So when you're guaranteed anonymity by a journalist, particularly a BBC journalist, the deal is you never write that person's name down. On a paper even. You only tell your editor if they ask you. You certainly don't include it in the database as a contributor, which is what happened. That woman could have been killed, right? But we just took the whole site down. Just like there, just take it down. And that taught me a really vital lesson. You can find things along the course where you think, oh, there's no real personal data issues in this. Everybody knows that the land registry is, for example, full of public data. Who owns what land? Well, harm anyone? It's sort of not open at the moment, the data. You know, why don't we make it all open? Well, be very careful, because people may have made mistakes in the past that really quite serious about publishing open, personal data as open data. If the data hadn't been collected to be open, personal data has not been collected with the intention of being open in internet open terms, be cautious about putting it live. The BBC eventually, to their credit, cleaned all this up after I'd gone, about 4 years later, published without the contributors, because they literally didn't know whether the contributor had given consent to throw all that data away. Right. Embarrassing story over. If you're arguing with a lawyer, you've lost. Okay, just walk away. Unless they like the lawyer I spoke to. She wasn't arguing with me; she was being helpful. I spent 6 months of my life in Ofcom, which I'll never get back because I spent all of my time arguing with lawyers. Ofcom's run by lawyers, essentially. There's a bunch of great data in Ofcom's communications regulator, great research. Every time I tried to open up, they went, oh, I better talk to the lawyers. And the lawyers were the dominant cost in that organisation. And it was just not open. Good example of why that's awful. Ofcom had this rather nice little service called Site Finder that let you find out where the mobile phone masts were in Britain. Quite important, interesting data, supplied voluntarily by the mobile phone companies. Which you could scrape. It was scraped. Sort of. But it wasn't open data because the mobile phone companies own the data. Right? There's no regulatory requirements for them to publish it as open data. Someone did an FOI request to Ofcom asking for the data. Now any normal organisation that wasn't run by lawyers would have emailed back saying, thanks very much, sorry. Some bluffy, waffly excuse saying, yeah, I'm sure any of you done a freedom of information request, you can get a reply that says, yeah, sorry. Ofcom's run by lawyers. They were like, brilliant, really interesting court case here. Great, we could set some precedent. 7 years later, Ofcom lost and was required to publish that data as open data, at which point 3 out of 4 mobile phone companies stopped sharing the data. Because why would they? They're no longer in control of their data. So if your organisation is genuinely run by lawyers and you're arguing with them, or you're arguing with a lawyer in an organisation, you've lost. Another slightly nasty lesson. Sometimes organisations and institutions are just analog, and the data's analog too, so it's not really data. but the mindset and culture is analog to and closed. I really learned this the hard way at the BBC. I had a vision for the BBC as a complete catalyst for internet era creativity and innovation. So those Reithian values reinterpreted to be an internet era with inform, educate and entertaining brand new ways that are native to the internet, not just broadcasting. Maybe I was naive, but that was what got me excited. So we launched Backstage.bbc.co.uk as a developer network with a bunch of open data that the BBC had sort of gathered, looking for ideas to build things. This was 2005. And then actually, Greg Dyke, when he was Director General of the BBC, announced something called the Creative Archive, which is, look, the BBC's got this amazing archive of 1.3 million programmes going back to 1938. We should release them to the nation on a Creative Commons licence, so you can reuse, remix. It's our cultural heritage. Maybe not stuff that's particularly recent, there's commercial value, but out beyond that could be an amazing result. By the way, this is all sitting on servers in the BBC. It was not hard to do. Horrible truth was, when we actually looked into it, there's not a single thing in the BBC's archive that the BBC unequivocally owns. Because it's set up as an analogue broadcast organisation, it hadn't cared about rights and perpetuity. It just had, there's literally not a single thing. They thought they'd found a radio broadcast of a concert done by the BBC Symphony Orchestra, so BBC employees, employment contract, in a BBC building, you know, on a BBC broadcast on the radio, and then they found out the conductor was a freelance and they hadn't got his contract anymore. They couldn't even release that. And I made a naive thing, which I thought, I'll do my usual trick of show not tell. We'll actually build internally a version of this. We'll let you download any BBC programme. This is it. This is 2005, the BBC Archive testbed, clues in the name, where you could download and watch any BBC programme from about 2005. But we actually went further and further back, thinking the BBC will get it. You know, people in the BBC love making things, you know, creativity. That's iPlayer, and they'll never go beyond iPlayer. In the end, they put some flash on the front. Thought like broadcasters, could only think like broadcasters, could only think, oh, there's like a 7-day window where we'll let you watch the telly, and never move beyond that. And I'm afraid the BBC is still trapped broadly in that mindset of, we're an analogue broadcaster, we're one to many. Sometimes you have to admit defeat and walk away. Which I'm ashamed to say I did to the BBC. Digital institutions are made of data. Okay? And there's some amazing stuff happening where organisations are realising what they can do when they conceive of their DNA being digital, being ones and zeros, being data. And the best example I'm going to give of an organisation that's on that journey employs this woman, who's a total hero of mine, Laura Jewis. She's runs digital at the Office of National Statistics, which is an organisation full of people who live and breathe data. And they're statisticians. There are statisticians trapped in an analogue organisation. Innately, they think about data properly, rigorously. The systems they have, their ways of working, the computing they have available. Everyone kept a server under their desk because then they could control their own destiny. Because they couldn't trust anybody in IT, and I don't blame them, I'd have done the same. They're running notes. 2015, they were running Lotus Notes. That kind of place. Right? And yet, they're statisticians. Laura, amazing woman. Open data geek. Linked data geek, but I'll let off that. Has been working for the last 3 years, ostensibly on the surface, to help them redo their website over the last 18 months, because their website was famously described by the FT as the worst website in the world. They relaunched it last week, and they've got a nice new website. Okay, it's actually a website built for data, unlike .uk, which is not a website built for data, but ONS is a website built to host and manage data. So everything's built out of data, such as the graphs. You can download it. You stick /data on the end of any URL, you'll get the JSON. That includes the search results, the index, the whole thing is literally a big data API. That's kind of cool. That's not why it's important. The reason it's important is because Laura has taken the opportunity of building a website that represents the organisation that is made of data to play back to the whole of the Office of National Statistics why they need to change the way they think, work, operate, be more open, to share infrastructure, to trust each other to host their data, to actually agree canonical language for labelling things. Imagine statisticians arguing about naming things. It's a hard problem. And they've used the website and the fact that the website's made of data to push that message of transformation around being a different culture, where you're not in your silo going, oh, I can't trust anybody, to actually letting yourself be part of a platform, part of an ecosystem of statistics data, which is collectively an order of magnitude more powerful than each of those individuals doing their own individual statistical release. Right, my final message is be bold. And this really is about GDS and the story of government. So, since 2011, the institutions of government have enjoyed 5 years of digital transformation. Some of them enjoyed it more than others, but most of government has gone on a journey to actually realising that the business of service design and their services of users and their digital way of working, open way of working, has enormous benefits and is fun. But for me, on leaving, there's one big message, one big lesson. Is that we weren't bold enough over those last 5 years. Not nearly, not even close. It felt bold, introducing agile multidisciplinary working to universal credit felt bold. Actually, it wasn't bold enough. Let me explain why. If you wanted to open a business that could trade in Britain 15 years ago, you'd have got this pile of posts from different bits of government, from Companies House, from HMRC, probably from the Department for Business, whatever it's called then, your local council. You've got a bunch of paperwork. If you do that 3 years ago, you'd have dealt with these websites, which essentially digitise those same siloed processes. Okay, it would have been sort of quicker, but you still wouldn't know where you needed to go next. If you do that today, they look nicer. Companies House has got a sort of okay API. Okay. But you still have to know which different bits of government you have to engage with before you start. And these are the start pages of 273 transactional services that a business may have to engage with as it gets set up, depending on what license it wants, whether it wants to employ people, what taxes it wants to register for. You have to go to 273 front doors of government. You have to know which way government is structured before you can start. That's not good enough. That's not good enough. That's better. Maybe it's, you have to start by being better at what you've always done. Digitise a paper government. That's what we'll be doing. Someone once said this to me, it's harsh but fair. Okay? It's not about front ends, it's about organisations. We have digitised the existing institutions of government, all those departments, those agencies. We help them digitise. From the person wanting to start a business in the UK that could trade, it's still going to take you a month. You know, Estonia takes you 18 minutes to start a business. That can trade and be taxed to get all the licenses it needs in 18 minutes. And if you want to understand, they can do that because they started their country again when the Russians left. And their first president was a C coder. Okay? They made some terrible mistakes, by the way, along the way, which when you get them drunk, they'll tell you. We put lipstick on a pig. Not a pig that looks like this either, but a pig that looks like this. Okay? A pig brother kind of pig, a nasty Napoleon-shaped pig. And I say that with venom, really, because we can laugh about the fact that there are 273 siloed organisations that you need to potentially engage with as you're starting a business. But when it comes to data, particularly personal data, but data generally, there's something really horrible in the digital era about that. Which is because each of those 273 organisations has a particular mindset which says, I've got to collect all the data myself and look after it all myself. I've got to be data maximalists. I can't trust any other of these organisations. I've got to capture and collect all this data myself. I've got to be in control of my own destiny. They're institutions that are acting like those statisticians with their servers under their desks. They're self-rational, actually. From a personal data perspective in a digital era, that's terrifying. It's fine in a paper-based era to have loads of personal data dotted around because it's paper. You can't copy it, you can't hack it, can't nick it. Chinese can't have it. We've digitised all that. They can now. We have got a ocean of personal, unmanaged, badly managed, open and personal data across those institutions. And that's wrong. That's not bold enough to me. So about a year ago, I thought, sod it, the government won't fire me either. I'm going to nick the very best people I can and hide them away. And say, led by this gentleman, Richard Pope, who is the most amazing person I've ever met in my life. Read his blog. Oh my gosh. The brains behind anything that GDS did was Richard. I hid them away in various bits in the BBC and the Land Registry until, and the National Audit Office to give them space away from the noise. And I set them a brief. Which is what if we start again? With government. With everything. Imagine government has disappeared. All the government has disappeared, apart from Parliament or local councils. Imagine all local councils have gone, all the departments have gone, there's nothing left, some terrible catastrophe has happened. Don't mess with the democracy bit. Let's keep that as it is for now. Let's keep that bit fixed. But everything else has gone. What are you going to do? It's 2015. Build me another government. Design me another government. I didn't give them a completely blank canvas. There's a bunch of expectations that are realisable in 2015 as it was at the time. I want services that were unimaginable. Shazam is unimaginable to my father. I can't understand that it's possible. It's magic. Okay. Yeah, it's Shazam. That's what, 12 years old? Okay. Imagine what Uber does to his head. Where's a government service that's previously unimaginable? Where's the magic of public services? I want some fucking magic. You know? I want stuff that just works first time, in real time. Doesn't happen very often. Public services, I'm ashamed to say, often because stuff doesn't happen in real time. And in batches, you get failure and stuff falls through the cracks. I want new services up in weeks, and I want them to be a fraction of today's cost. That's not hard, given how much government we're spending on this kind of stuff. I want ministers to be able to see if their policy's working within days, not decades. I want the front line to be able to focus their effort on supporting the needs of people who need help, not doing a bunch of bad paperwork and rekeying to service people that should be able to serve themselves. I want fraud designed out, security baked in, I want to be able to evolve defences, usual stuff. Responsive to feedback, accountability, crystal clear, who is accountable for this. I want services to use the concept of just enough personal data, minimum viable personal data. I want the citizen in control of their personal data. It's their data, not the government's. The government is them. I want usual stuff, fine. Expect that. Open data, open standards. I want to be able to have services to span different whatever they're called, local and central government devolved, and not be in silos with those. I want to be able to see my policies as code, please. Why can't I see environmental policies as the code that they are? They are legislated as code, essentially. Why can't I see them? And then obviously I want everything as an API, as long as the user is granted consent and it's secure. So other people can build other stuff on top of what I view as infrastructure. Right, so they did some amazing work, genuinely incredible team. And they sketched in code, but what they really did was think about the institutions required. What would a natively digital, natively open institution of government, or institutions of government look like? Because that's actually the problem. The code's easy. And if you asked an architect to draw what they did, you might draw it like this. In that, think of a city, back to the infrastructure metaphor. You've got a whole ecosystem of services, public services, private services. They come and they go. They grow and they fall. Thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of services. They're relying on some common platforms that are boring. The ability to identify yourself as someone, a human being on the internet, gov.uk verify, identity assurance, the ability to pay money, ability to be notified of something. Boring platforms, common platforms. Straight to the bottom, a notion that on one level is new, this notion of canonical, immutable registers, single sources of truth, so I can know that one bit of government is looking after the fact that a company is a company and has the following identifier, and other bits of government are going to trust that. other commercial companies can trust that canonical immutable data in a register because it's managed as a register by a registrar whose job it is just to look after the data and deal with address and things like that. Funnily enough, the Victorians invented that with the land registry and the company registry and a bunch of things. We just sort of forgotten their actual role. And then crucially in the middle, this notion of trust and consent, the citizen having trust in the system, having visibility of what's happening where with their data and with open data, and giving consent and having means of redress when things go wrong. With another picture of it, with kind of where ministers would fit in. But enough of that. Let me show you the thing. I've got a little video. Hopefully it will work.
Here's a demo that shows the digital state in action. Let's look at a fictional news service from central government, buying a fishing licence. First, we start at gov.uk, just as you would for any other government service. Then you have to confirm your identity. This demo shows a fictional identity platform, but we expect gov.uk verified to do this task. You enter your details and you're signed in. Next, the service asks for your permission to access data about you held in registers, your name, age, and any existing licences you hold. Just those things and nothing else. You grant permission with one tap. Straight away, the service knows you're old enough for an adult fishing licence, because you granted permission. There are a few more details to fill in depending on what licence you need. And now you have to pay for your fishing licence. This is a cross-government payments platform. It looks and works the same across many different services. A few more taps and it's done. Here's your digital fishing licence. You can save a copy on your phone and show it whenever you need to. Another example. This is a parking permit service from a fictional local authority. Again, you have to confirm your identity. It works just the same way as before. Now the service asks permission to see some data. In this case, it's your home address and details of cars you own. Just those things and nothing else. Straight away, the service knows which car needs the permit and where it will be parked. The fee is calculated instantly, and all this happens because you granted permission for the service to see data about you. Now you just have to pay for your permit. This is the same payments platform that we saw last time. A few more taps and it's done. Here's your copy of the parking permit. The local authority automatically knows your car is covered. There's no need to display a paper permit in the car window.
Cool. So we built about 6 or 7 demos like that, using actually this kind of institutional architecture. And that's the basis of stuff around government as a platform that you may have seen. So they've started building the boring stuff for common platforms, because no one notices that, no one really cares, it's just IT. The message I want to give you tonight is that the heart of genuinely radically changing this country to have data as infrastructure, both for government and for the private sector, is a battle around registers. And the institutional shape, mindset, openness of the organisations that ends up running registers. Another frontier, by the way, is personal data and consent, which I believe is absolutely critical to get informed consent. Lots of people in government, mandarins, don't believe that. They don't think it's necessary. It's a patrician mindset, which is massively insecure, as I talked about. But registers are really where it's at. And there's some genuinely exciting stuff happening and some really vital battles happening or about to happen, which you can help in. Based on what I said earlier, find the people you need to help, ask them how you can help. So this is Paul Downey, PSD. He is the technical architect around thinking about these registers. And he blogged about it. If you want to learn more about them, why they're different, why they're not just another database, why they're genuinely radically different new concepts. Read his blog post. There's some really interesting opportunities off the back of some of the blockchain tech around Merkle trees, around immutability, using cryptography to be able to prove a register hasn't been messed with. Not so keen on blockchain as technology, much more interested on certificate transparency as a technological way forward, but A myrtle tree is magic, amazing thing around guaranteeing the integrity of a public open register, and doing some interesting work there. There's stuff happening if you know where to look. If you go to register.register.gov.uk, you'll see the register of registers, and you'll see the kind of stuff emerging very slowly. They actually announced the first one about 3 weeks ago, which is really brilliantly boring. It's a register of the countries in the world as recognised by the United Kingdom. You think, what's the point of that? About 100 different lists of countries inside the UK. Foreign Office were just pulling their hair out as we were claiming a country was a country when it wasn't, calling countries the wrong name, calling people in the country by the wrong thing. Classic example of that issue. Everyone keeping their data in a silo going, no, I know what a country is. I'm the tax office. Oh, do you know what a country is? You're a tax office. Delighted that another amazing woman, a woman called Alison Daniels, in a Foreign Office. Foreign Office was really interested. She's amazing. Just went, we're going to do this for government. We're going to be the first register. We're going to set ourselves up as a bit of the Foreign Office, as an institution that serves the rest of government. And the whole nation, actually, and the world. The world wants to know what the countries the British government think exists in a canonical, immutable, provable form. We're going to run it. And it's going to look like, can you go back one? It's going to look like that. So we're going to have a look at it. As boring and brilliantly boring as you'd expect. There's some interesting countries change and merge and civil wars and stuff like that. But it's a genius place to start because no one can argue that the Foreign Office don't own the right to work out whether a country is a country, and no other bit of government is going to dare argue that they know better. So it wins that basic argument brilliantly. And respect to Foreign Office for stepping up and hiring people to run this in perpetuity. Can't run this just for Christmas, right? Got to run this forever now. So build things on it. Bits of government already started building things on it. The petitions website uses it. Lots of other different bits of government are going, right, we're going to start relying on it now. We started that momentum. That's the register of registers, which does my head in and gets very weird and circular. But the big one, back to Tom Watson, and I'm not going to say postcode address file, because I don't really care about that anymore. I care about physical addresses a lot. Because physical addresses are a piece of data infrastructure that you make open, genuinely open, and trusted and high quality, can transform the efficiency of your country. Just in terms of making sure stuff gets delivered to the right place, services happen in the right place, the fire engine knows where to go, okay, when your house is on fire. I can't believe we don't see it as yet as a critical piece of civic infrastructure to have an open and trusted single address infrastructure. Australia just did it. Beat the Americans, beat us. I choose my words carefully. It's not hard to do technically, because that's it. That's not public. There's a battle royale about to happen about whether we do this or not as a country, or whether we continue to accept the fact that there are some private commercial interests that should beat that, for me, unbeatable argument that addresses and the unique identifiers around addresses, forget postcodes, care about postcodes. Unique identifiers around addresses should be an open data set. We win this one, and we won. So, back to what I said earlier, find out who, if you're interested in this stuff, find out who needs helping inside government. There'll be about 15 people who are going to win this argument and work out how you can help them. The moment you hear anything about this in public, just show the different ways that this could be valuable. Talk about why it's valuable, talk about where it could make your business work better, particularly because the treasury are important in this conversation. So it's business, no hippie shit, it's about business. And we can win this argument and maybe win my bet with Lord Allen around whether we actually get an open address register in the UK. So, my message is keep calm, carry on pushing around this agenda. That also applies to the organisations that you work in. And if you take those lessons that I've talked about in terms of how you help your organisation understand not just the benefits of open data, but the benefits of an open culture, they all apply. Don't talk about the benefits of an open culture. Just show them. Just I go and just walk people around where my team are working at the moment and just let them watch. Because it feels different. Feels freer somehow. I don't say we need to arrange our desks differently, because we need to be more open. Don't say we need to, don't ask permission for a blog or to tweet, just do it. Probably won't be fired. Generally people aren't fired for doing this kind of stuff, as long as you do it responsibly. And you'll find the organisation see the benefits and follow you, in my experience generally. If you try and win the intellectual argument, writing papers, writing strategies, you're playing the wrong game, you're playing the wrong rules. Don't bother, just do it. Just show that way. We're hiring, sorry. We are hiring. Coop Digital. Thank you very much. Happy to take questions.
Thanks, Tom. So yeah, fire away. I suppose there's going to be lots of questions. Just wait for the mic because we've been recorded.
Yeah, fascinating. I'd kind of like to know a little bit more about how you're going to feather in the cooperative, you know, your job at the co-ops, future vision, if you like, from your point of view, into what you've learned from your work at GDS, please.
We're still early on that journey. Our focus has been on helping the existing bits of the co-op group come on the journey to taking advantage of some of these new ways of working. That'll take a time. Clearly membership is what makes co-op different. That's important. But we are keeping a little bit of our brains on what we could do that co-op hasn't done before, that you could only imagine doing because of the internet. And stuff that's native to the internet era. But it's a journey to take the organisation on. I mean, maybe you can see the prize that I can see, but just saying, there's an amazing prize over there, oh my God! When, the organisation's been through a tough few years, existential borderline. Now it's probably not the time to be screaming to the hills about this goal over there. We've got to fix some pretty important stuff that get the organisation in a solid state. But it doesn't take much to get excited, and we're pretty excited about what's possible. There's some really exciting potential in the existing businesses, let alone in potential new ones that we could do.
Any more questions?
You're our person on the inside of the co-op. How can we help?
Keep talking about the benefits of being open in a co-op. We talked earlier. So the more people out there talking about the commercial advantage of organisations whose users own them, the better. So there's almost like a bit of cognitive dissonance we have to get past, which says anything new and exciting that's big and exciting in this internet era is VC-funded vulture capitalism. And extractive. It's got to be extractive. That's not true. But I can sympathise with people who think it is true, given all the press about... Nothing wrong with VC-funded model, it's just one of many models. I think a cooperative model, being as aggressive and ambitious, but with a different ownership model, actually has some competitive advantages versus that extractive model, which I don't think long-term will keep trust. Like, what are you doing with my data? Just that kind of stuff. What, you've just been bought and then, talk about those opportunities loudly. And I'd also ask that you are sympathetic to the fact that, yeah, there are some amazing, exciting opportunities out there that we can all see, but the co-op's just had a tough couple of years. Give us a bit of time. There's some great stuff to be getting on with to help the organisation get fit again. That will take a little bit of time. But keep shouting about the prize and explaining why the prize is real. There are other models.
I've got a question. It was interesting what you were saying about the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, and it's the notion of, is it always important to kind of, when you're trying to create organisational change, to identify the power structures and the canonical sources within an organisation, so nobody so they won't be contested when you do try and go for change.
Yeah, I mean, this is the whole thing about working in public institutions or in any institution really, is that the whole game is about understanding the power dynamics. And that's down to, there's two different aspects of your question. One is the people and who actually can make change happen. And one of the wonderful things that I've seen again and again, I'm seeing it in the co-op, is the moment you talk about and show that you can work in a different way, where different flows have a flat hierarchy in the organisation, there'll be a wide range of people who come in the existing organisation who are always there wanting that change to happen and will just jump on board. And many of you here tonight, thank you. That happened in government in spades. Alison Daniels, the moment we went live in alpha.gov.uk, turned up and went, I'm in, don't care what my bosses say, I'm in, I want the FCO in on this, because this is brilliant, and I'm with you. And another woman in another bit of the organisation actually brought her team over and sat with me and said, you can use them as you see fit, I'm so in. Okay, so spotting those people who are with you and having a network who are willing is critical. When it comes to data, it's just a bit subtle. We didn't start with business identifiers, for example, because there are at least 4 bits of central government that thought they had the right to issue those. Even though legally it's Companies House, right? HMRC don't trust Company House data, Biz don't trust Company House data. That was not the place to start. It was inconceivable that anyone would challenge FCO about countries, so we started there. But there's a whole bunch of other potential registers where it's much, much, much more contentious about who should act as that registrar. And maybe we need some new institutions that don't exist yet in government, that act in the right way, that think of themselves as data registrars and not offering public services at all, really. They're just there to look after the data. But yeah, it's all about understanding where the opportunities are and who the people are. It does come down to people. If Alison Daniels hadn't been at the FCO, notwithstanding the right thing to do would be to use the companies, to do the country register first. Without her, it wouldn't happen.
I've got another one actually. Sorry, I've got the mic, so I'm going to ask you. Last one. So do you see, you mentioned that analogue institutions stay out. So, they're the most difficult to crack in a sense. Are there any institutions which you would think would be too much of a challenge, too difficult? It would do more damage than good.
Just not thought of that. I'm disappointed that the BBC didn't come on that journey. Really disappointed because it could have done in 2002-03. I look at lots of other institutions, and you can always meet people in them who've got a vision. There's people in the British Library who've got an amazing vision about what an internet-era British library should be. Even the NHS. It's almost without exception, there are institutions that, even though on the surface look just like, oh my God, this is just a sea of glue, there are people in there who have a vision for change. I suppose my BBC reflections about that organisation was you can't always win. And sometimes they just have to die slowly, and that's sad. Invent a new one. So we need to invent a new BBC. If anyone fancies doing that, get on it.
Thanks for the talk. Do you think if there's any disadvantage or limitations of the cooperative model?
Oh God, no! There's an overhead around how do you actually make sure members universally use their power, so you don't end up with small elites of very active members claiming representation over everybody else. That's a classic democratic challenge. I think the advantages around alignment between ownership and those who are using your service are enormously powerful in the internet era, really uniquely powerful. So I think today the internet era is more suited to a cooperative as a model than when the days when the Rochdale pioneers were inventing theirs. I just think there's some cognitive dissonance about a variety of models that could be applied, and we've just got to do it. We've just got to show, not tell. Don't know. Theory around cooperativism, not your man. I'll make some.
to the outlook,
Yeah.
businesses and organisations, do you think it'll just die away?
Slowly.
Yeah, I think it'll die away because, you know, even organisations like General Electric, GE, the oldest business in the industry in America, they've gone totally digital.
Yep.
They make things now, but don't sell things. They just sort of lease them, make all their money from data. And instead of train, what they're interested in is the velocity of that train. They've got all these sensors on that train, the Internet of Things, all that data comes back, and they're analysing that in real time and trying to get that velocity from 50 kilometres an hour to 51. That's all they do.
Yep. I mean,
any business that isn't doing that's going to die away.
In a business world, yeah, but there's a lot of public institutions that do not have those competitive pressures.
No, but we're the competitive pressure. The customers demand it.
I think it takes a long time for that feedback loop. Could take literally a lifetime for organisations that probably should die and be replaced in the public sector to die and be replaced.
There's still the same disruption now because
Completely.
I think, you know, people get fed up with it
Yep.
and someone will create something else completely different.
You end up with situations where the government gets disintermediated by the commercial sector, and that's not great for democracy for some important services. And we can be too negative. I've not found a minister in the last 5 years, or a shadow minister, who doesn't recognise that. They just don't run the country. The civil service runs the country. And the radicalism required, I have some hope that there's a generation of mid-ranking civil servants who know they've got to work for the next 25 years, who aren't just waiting for retirement and don't want anything too much to change before they go off with their gilt-edged, you know, final salary pension. I'm being pejorative here, but you get my drift. There's a sort of negative feedback loop around, you know, those organisations take a long time to die or change. Much more positively, I can tell you, the moment that FCA register, that bit of the Foreign Office started doing that register, there were a dozen other bits, other people in government going, I want to create a new bit of my institution that does that for this register. So you start to get jealousy within the public sector about, oh, I want one of those, I want a bit of that. That can change things really quite quickly. When you get people being jealous and ambitious within the civil service to change things and seeing a better way. But yeah, the lack of competitive pressure is a real issue. That's why, you know, it's vital. When we talk about co-ops, it's a competitive organisation in a competitive market. And we have some competitive advantages by our ownership model, but we're not a bunch of hippies, right? You know? It's because we're in a commercial environment and that keeps us clean, keeps us, you know, lean. I am a hippie.
Anyone else?
I just want to push a little bit more on the idea of the cooperative advantage in the modern day internet era. We've all seen the success of Uber and Airbnb. I kind of get a sense that that's what you're alluding to. How do you think that the cooperative movement can perhaps leverage some of that inclusivity and participation to kind of solve some of these bigger problems that we're facing around, you know, lack of community, you know, a kind of lack of education and the need to be sustainable and what that looks like. You know, how?
Well, I think I've said what I think the first step is. I think we've got a bit of a trap that we're falling into as a country, or actually as a Western society, around there's only one model for doing this great, new, interesting, exciting. I think it was amazing as a thing. What a service, magic. Don't necessarily agree with how they treat their drivers. Okay. Not that the drivers all complain when I talk to them. But the fact that I don't agree is kind of neat, actually. I think what's interesting is when you look at the economics of it, an Uber that was owned by its drivers should be more competitive than an Uber that is having value extracted by a layer in the middle that's just code. It's a frictionless, weightless organisation in the middle that's extracting value from both sides of that market. But we have to win the argument that says brilliant new things of the internet era don't have to be VC extractive funding. There are other ways. Some of those are co-op. Some of them are co-op, I would argue. That's the first step. But, I mean, you look at other sectors, and everywhere you look, you think that issue of extractive areas where you should be able to aggregate supply, aggregate demand, is really exciting. You can aggregate supply and demand in ways that are inconceivable before the internet. but we have some basic arguments to win first about suspension of disbelief, if I'm honest, and we're going to have to show not to.
Welcome to Manchester.
Thank you very much.
Right. Thanks very much, Tom.
Welcome. There's more wine outside, so drink it. Cool.
Yeah, drink it.
Thank you.
Right, before we wrap up, just got a few announcements. There's a few events that are coming up which may interest you or which you should get involved with. So on the 17th of March, there's a hack day that's been organised with the National Council for Voluntary Organisations to look deep into charity data. So if you're interested in helping the voluntary sector understand the data that they have in order for them to deliver better services and to exist, I suppose, then please do get involved with that. We'll kind of send out this information online, so you'll be able to sign up for these things. The next Open Data Manchester is looking at charity data, 360 Giving IATI, which is the International Aid Transparency Initiative, where countries that donate money and organisations that donate money for world development, it's the register of that money. There's also a follow-up event which is following along the lines of this event, which is about open policy making, which is happening on the 26th of April. That's about how data can be used to create new policies, the ethics of data science, and how data is being used in good and bad ways to create policy that affects all of us, and also how open data works within that policy context. So that's with Cabinet Office and with the Open Data Institute, so they're kind of coming up to Manchester to talk about that, and I'm sure it'll be quite challenging as well, because there are some quite ethical issues within that. This weekend there is a hackathon in Lee, helping Wigan understand its needs, and also in Leeds there is a flood hack, if you're interested in helping people understand how floods work, or don't, or destroy. So once again, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the Co-op for hosting us. Thank you very much for Tom for such an illuminating talk, and thank you for all being here. And please do finish off the wine, because it doesn't go back. Thank you.